Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. Hope you're doing well and trading well, and hope you're green on the day. I'm green once again today, just over $700 in 20 minutes this morning. So it was a good morning. It's the afternoon right now. I've been finished working for a few hours now, and just decided that I wanted to make this video not to go over the specifics of any one trade. I'll put the detailed ins and outs up so you can take a look at it on your own time if you want. But the reason I'm not going to talk about it is because I basically did everything the way that I always do everything. I mean, I traded the same strategy the same way that I've done in countless other videos where I've talked about my detailed ins and outs. So I didn't really feel the need to go over that again because I don't want to make the same video over and over. But what I haven't actually talked about that much on this channel is what I'm looking for when I check things out pre-market. So I'm in Central Time Zone right now, so for me the market opens up at 8:30 a.m. and so I get busy at least a half hour early. Usually I'm 7:30, 7:45. Sometimes I'll be as late as 8 a.m. taking a look at things. But I take a look at the daily chart and then also the 1 minute chart, and I look for specific things on those charts to kind of give me an idea of what I might want to trade, or at least what I'm going to pay close attention to as soon as the market does open up. And one thing that was interesting today is that I made a pretty good amount of money on MU once again, and I didn't trade AMD at all. And if you've been watching this channel or if you read my book, you know that I trade AMD a lot. In fact, it's at this point it's probably my most traded ticker. But today I saw something on AMD that made me not want to get involved when I compared it to the things that I was seeing like on the Qs and on MU. And so I just want to do this video today to talk about what is it exactly that I saw that made me not want to trade AMD at the beginning of the day and made me want to trade MU instead. And I think it's pretty easy to spot once I point it out to you. So I'm going to do a little screen share and go over it, and then you can see exactly why I wanted to trade one thing and why I didn't want to trade something else. And these are skills that you can apply yourself to anything that you're looking at when you're going over pre-market analysis. So let's check that out. Okay, so here we are taking a look at some charts. We've got the daily chart on AMD on the left, and we've got the daily chart for MU over here on the right. I'm going to switch to Apple in a second because really the two main trades that I made today were on Apple and MU. And I just, like I was saying in the intro, I wanted to explain what I saw pre-market and why I decided against trading AMD this morning, even though that's one of my most traded tickers. And I hope that after I explain this, you guys will see exactly what I'm talking about. So let's not pay any attention to this far right candle because I'm recording this part of this video after the markets are already closed. So this was today. This last candle on the right on both sides of the screen is today. So you got to put yourself in the perspective of if you were waking up this morning looking at this, you're not going to see this candle at all. So first of all, let's take a look at what I saw this morning when I woke up and I looked at AMD. I saw yesterday was a green day, so that's good. But then let's take a look at the shape of the candle. It's a rather small bodied candle. It's not a tiny body, but it's fairly small, and it's got large upper and lower wicks. And so what this tells me is it says a little bit of indecision. It's kind of not sure exactly what it wants to do. So it's not telling me bullish or bearish with any sort of strength all by itself, just with the shape of this candle. It's kind of very much up in the air, right? But then let's look left and see where we're actually at. So we closed, let me make a price level, get a price level here. So we closed right here yesterday. And if you look left, then you can see all of the touches, and we could even go further left and use this candle right here and include that one in. But we touched on, like 5 different candles a couple weeks ago. So to me, even though this was a few weeks ago, which makes it less important than if it was like yesterday, at the same time, I'm feeling like this level right here was going to act like a resistance level. And it would be a little bit harder for us to pop up through this level today. Now, like I always say with every video, there's a caveat. Anything can happen at any time. So you can't ever make, like positive statements. This is definitely going to happen if this happens. No, nothing's ever definitely going to happen. But based on this, what I'm seeing, this is indecision where we're at on the charts in terms of, price action over here, looking at the numbers, 170, 175, this actual level, when we look left, we see a lot of touches on that particular level. So to me, that's saying that we might have a little bit of a harder time breaking through this level. Whereas if you look over to the right on MU, this is where we've been at recently. And yesterday, this is a very positive candle. I mean, you see this long lower wick with barely any upper wick. Most of the time yesterday, we spent towards the upper half, definitely on the upper side of, if you cut this whole thing in half, we were playing around on the upper half of the entire candle all day yesterday. So that's a very strong sign. And then when you zoom back out and take a look at where we've been at for the last few weeks on this, we're already up above the highs. I mean, you can go back, who knows how far you have to go back to get to the highs where we've been at recently. So to me, this was a hell of a lot stronger in terms of a daily chart. Because we haven't even, we're in like uncharted territory right here. Now, you could also play devil's advocate and say, well, since we're up so high, we're extended, that gives you more of a chance that you might fall out and retrace. Yeah, that's true. But when you actually look at the shape of the candle and combine the shape of yesterday's candle with where it's at in terms of the numbers for price action and compare it to where we've been lately, we are above everything else, which means that, it's more likely that there's room to go on this one. And now let's go ahead and check out Apple on the daily. So Apple on the daily is not really telling me a whole lot. It's very much I'm getting no real strong feeling either way from this candle. I mean, it's definitely a negative candle. It's a red day. We had a red day yesterday, as you can see. But it's not like we fell out below any other really important level. It's just sort of playing in the same range that we've been in for the last 5 or 6 days. So although it's a red candle and it's more negative than positive, obviously, it's not giving me a real strong lean in any one direction. So when that happens, you want to go to the minute chart. And as a matter of fact, that's what I do every day. I start out looking at the daily chart action, and then I switch to the minute action, and I look at the minute chart pre-market. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, and now we're back, and you can see I've changed the charts to the minute chart. And basically, this is all pre-market, this light gray. This black on the left was yesterday, and then this was overnight, and then this right side on both of these charts was the morning today. So right away, you can see a couple of differences between these two charts. And the first thing that you can see is that, well, the first thing that I noticed is that this right here is just pretty much positively negative. I mean, it's negative all the way. There's not anything that's looking good about this. This was basically the end of yesterday, right where my crosshair is. And then this is the opening of pre-market this morning, and we just fell out so hard for, basically like the first 20 minutes of the day today. The first 20 minutes, we fell out really, really hard. I mean, we're talking about 168 down to 163. So like 5 points. We fell out 5 points in 20 minutes. That's massive. And then on the right, what you'll notice is that we had the low of pre-market right here. We had the high of pre-market right here, which was actually higher than at the end of day yesterday. So one thing I like to do is I like to take a look at where we were at essentially closing. So we closed like right there. We've got the low of pre-market right about there. And then we've got the high of pre-market right there. And then you can look at the fact that the end of the day yesterday, we made a slightly higher low right at the end of the day. And then the higher side of the low was essentially the very low point right before we opened up today. And then what I like to do to give myself even further clarification is I like to put some study sets on here. And now I'm going to put this crossover on here that shows you the VWAP basically. So I've got the VWAP on this chart, and one thing that you'll notice is that on this chart on the left on AMD, if we open it up, we never really get above the midpoint of the VWAP at the open, and we just kind of hug this lower level for the first, like I said, 20 minutes or so. Yeah, about the first 20 minutes. And frequently what will happen when you're dealing with VWAP, you get the upper and the lower lines on the VWAP, is that it will either just simply bounce off of it or it will ride it for a while. So if this had come down on this candle, if you take a look, I'm going to zoom in even more here. This candle at 833, if we had come down and touched the lower half of this VWAP and then bounced off of it, that would have been a nice strong signal. But instead, we did the other thing that will typically happen, and we just kind of rode it. Yeah, we retraced a little bit here, but we rode it all the way down to essentially 850 before we had any kind of like meaningful reverse in action. But that's not even the most important thing that I was looking at. The most important thing I was looking at was the fact that when you really zoom out and you take a look at the entirety of yesterday, after the market closed and then pre-market this morning, look at that 200 EMA, the thick white line right here. This is just a solid downward slope. I mean, we're trending downward. This is a very obvious downward trend. And the highest we got was almost up to the 200, but not even really that close, honestly. we kind of tried to pop up a little bit right before the open, but then we just fell out super hard and just continued trending downward all the way until about 10:30, where we just kind of straddled the 200 for a while and kind of like just moved sideways and then fell a little bit more at the end of the day. So I mean, the only time you could have worked the long today is if you had gotten in at like 20 minutes in and then held on for about 45 minutes to an hour. That could have worked for you. But when I was looking at the beginning of the morning today, I certainly didn't want to go long right at the beginning of the day seeing this. Now let's look over on the right hand side, and I'm going to do the same thing. Take a look at the difference here. So I know that this might be a little bit confusing. There's a lot going on here, but just stick with me for a second. I'm gonna take a look at this, make this the right size once again. So once again, look left. See that slope basically going completely downward. Now look right. You're sort of consolidating. You dip a little bit, but then at the beginning of kind of like, before we open up, we've got a bit of an upward slope. So we're trending upwards. It's very slight. I mean, it's definitely not, this upwards slant is not nearly as pronounced as this downwards slant is over here. But the more important thing on Apple this morning is you see we came down and we essentially bounced right off of the lower level on the VWAP and just bounced right off of it just a minute before we opened. And then we had that huge green candle right at the beginning, and we just basically rode the upper half of the VWAP all throughout, the first half hour until we kind of lost a little bit of steam here and just sort of consolidated. So it's essentially the exact opposite. The first half hour we completely fell out over here on AMD. First half hour we completely popped up on Apple. Okay, now let's look at MU. Now MU was a slightly different scenario altogether because we had a very, very strong downwards trend right before we opened. But I looked left, and what did I see when I looked left? I saw basically the lows of yesterday. I mean, we did pop down a little bit with that wick, but this is essentially the lows of the real body right here yesterday. And then I looked at a couple of things on MU. I saw that right before the open, we hadn't come down to touch or break through the lows of yesterday. That's the first thing. The second thing is, look how close we get to the bottom half of the VWAP, and we essentially bounced right off of it. That's number two. Number three, take a look at this candle right here. This is very strange. At 7:25, like more than an hour before we opened up this morning, we had this giant green candle. Now, sometimes in pre-market, you will see huge green or red candles that appear. And honestly, I don't know exactly what those mean. I just know that more often than not, they are significant, or they end up being significant throughout the course of the day. And so with this one, you can see that we almost exactly touch right where this pre-market candle was a half hour into the day. So we basically opened up and came right up to where this mystery giant green pre-market candle was before we washed out. But then we kind of consolidated for the rest of the day. But I mean, the real money was to be had once again in the first half hour of the day, which is where I did most of my trading. At the time when I made my screenshot, it was like basically a half hour into the session, and I was up over $700. And I left a couple of them on, and I've still got a few contracts open that I'm rolling over until tomorrow. But it's like I usually do. I'll trade a lot, and then if things are going my way and I made a lot of money, I'll frequently leave like 1 or 2 contracts on just to see what happens the next day, and that's what I did today. But 95% of my trading today was done within this first half hour. That's the way that you can play it pre-market is take a look at these little tells. Like this is a tell. I honestly don't know exactly what it means, so I can't explain that to you. I just know that more often than not, when you see something like this, whether it's a huge green or a huge red candle, it will mean something significant at some point during the day. And so when I saw this in combination with the fact that we had essentially bounced off this lower level on this VWAP here, I just said, I'm going long, and I got in it, and I just rode it all the way up to here. As opposed to AMD, which in pre-market, this is not giving me any sort of clue that we're actually going to do anything. Now, if I had seen a candle like this somewhere over here, like, jutting up through here, possibly I might have traded it differently, but I didn't see that. And so you can only trade based on what you actually see right in front of your eyes every morning. And that's basically just how I approach pre-market every single day. I look at the daily, and then I look at the minute. On the pre-market, I look for signs. I look for tells like this. I look for the overall slope of the 200, and then I look for where price action is interacting with the VWAP at the beginning of the day. I don't always have the VWAP up all day long. If you've read my book or seen my video course, I like the alligators a lot. So I'll keep the alligators on frequently, once I'm in a trade. But a lot of times, as I'm thinking about getting in, I will put up the VWAP and not really pay too much attention to this center line, but pay more attention to the outer lines, the upper and the lower levels on the VWAP to tell me if something's going to bounce or if it's just going to ride that line and continue. All right, so I hope that little breakdown made sense to you. You can see how when you take a look at the 200 EMA and you kind of gauge the overall direction or the slope of the line, it's something that is so simple yet can be so powerful to help you identify trends. And as you can see, if I had gone long AMD right at the beginning of the day, I would have lost money. But going long MU and Apple made me money. And it's really as simple as that. So just one thing to pay attention to when you're doing your pre-market analysis, always check your daily levels and see where those are at, and then switch to the minute candle, and then check how the trend is setting up on your minute candles pre-market, and just take it from there once the market opens. That's it for now. Hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you soon. Take care.